the things that we manage to have hidden away in our peripheral vision so we don't have to see them, come very clearly into focus at Christmas. Looking around a room and thinking, everybody here has known me for most of my life. None of them know me. For many people, it becomes a time of extreme masking. It's really important that we don't have such a fixed understanding or a fixed picture of what the perfect Christmas looks like. If I had a New Year's resolution, it would be that more and more of the hidden 20% express the world within them rather than trying to fit in the world around them.
The Hidden 20% won Best Interview Podcast at the British Podcast Awards, and we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for your support. We really want to do more. So follow, subscribe, and let's get this message out to more people. To wrap up our first year at the Hidden 20%, we're bringing back someone from day one, Carrie Grant. This time, though, we have the privilege of welcoming both Carrie and her husband, David, the iconic vocal coaches from Pop Idol and Fame Academy. Beyond their successful careers, the Grants are proud parents of 4 neurodivergent children, making them the perfect guests to unwrap a neurodivergent Christmas. Thank you so much for all your incredible support this year. We could not have done it without you. Here's to next year. Let's get into it. Let's see how great minds think differently. Carrie, we were sat here. This was like the first recording that we did.
I know, it was so exciting.
It's now Christmas time. A year's gone by.
You've won awards in the meantime.
We have won some awards in the meantime. And you had just been diagnosed autistic. How has your year been? Your first year being aware that you're autistic?
Do you know what? In one way, I feel the same as I did when I first got diagnosed and even before I got diagnosed. But I think the one thing that I would say I have noticed in myself is just I'm a lot more gracious towards myself because I'm really sociable and I love people. But I'm also aware that there comes a point where I need to turn the switch off.
Yep.
And I'm really aware of that now, of how often I do have a big group gathering in my house. It is like a community centre. But then when I'm done, I'm done.
Okay.
And rather than thinking, stay the extra half an hour till everyone's left, I'm like, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I am actually going to just say goodbye and walk upstairs an hour before everyone's meant to leave. And they can carry on, but I need to remove myself at this point. And in the past, I would have thought of myself as being like, why are you so weak? Why can't you just keep going? What is your problem? And now I'm like, no, I did great. I did 4 hours and knocked it out of the park socially. And now I do need to just be on my own, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's totally okay. And so, David, how have you experienced Carrie in the last year?
I'd say if anything's changed in the last year, it's been that Carrie, rather than saying I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other, is able to say, this is a characteristic of autism, and that's fine. That's me. That this is perfectly normal for me, rather than trying desperately to find a reason for it and then fix it or not be it. Just be able to say, this is where I'm at the moment.
Legitimizes
Well,
some of the things I feel.
It doesn't even, I think it's more than that. I think it explains a lot to you about you. And, so nothing's really changed except, as Carrie said, I think that Carrie is probably less judgmental of herself.
Do you think your relationship is better because of it?
That's such a good question. Is our relationship better? I think that we're understanding one another through neurodivergence. And
like a lens.
It's a new lens. And so there are times when I find myself saying to David, I'm autistic. And I'm quite annoyed and uppity. Whereas in the past, I probably would have just turned that in on myself. Whereas now he's more likely to get me saying, what are you expecting of me? I'm autistic. But equally, I'm understanding David, who has been on a 1.5 year waiting list for an ADHD assessment. I realised how hard life can be for David, actually. So I think there's a learning about one another in a slightly
Yeah.
different context,
Yes.
in a way.
We are who we always were, and yet in some ways, because we have an explanation for who we always were, we're learning about each other and seeing that things that we may have thought were idiosyncrasies or quirks are just perfectly normal.
Yeah, I guess, and I'm sort of assuming and asking here, because so much of your attention has naturally been on your family
Right.
and your children,
Yeah.
that there hasn't been that same mirror to hold up to yourselves,
No.
an opportunity to kind of go, hold on a minute, what's going on actually?
Yeah. And I think that can be, of course, that's lovely because you finally have a bit of time for yourself and you want that. But I also think that it can be quite frightening. I think there are elements of how you feel as your neurodivergent self, understanding your neurodivergence, that are really difficult. I find picking up the phone really, really difficult. And sometimes David will just go, here's the phone, talk to someone. And in the past, I would have just gone, no, don't do that. Whereas now, I not only go, don't do that, but when he's put the phone down, I'm like, how could you do that to an autistic person? It's like, I've got another layer of anger. And so sometimes that comes out. And I think we're just working through some of that with each other, and me trying to stay patient when David doesn't love a spreadsheet, which I don't get because spreadsheets are great.
They are amazing.
Yeah. All of the autistic people, for a spreadsheet. The ADHDers are like, give me my chaos.
Oh, please. Yeah. Also, I think that one of the things that has really, I think, changed, certainly in me, is that when you have an explanation of why the world is round, you don't say it should be flat.
Mm-hmm.
When you have an explanation of why things are the way they are, like Carrie said, I said, why did you just throw the phone at me and say it's such and such a person?
I just have to say, I've never ever thrown a phone at you, by the way.
No, like thrust the phone, like, here, Carrie.
Literal.
Yes.
Literal.
Yes. When I
didn't throw it.
Thrust the phone at you. And now I understand it's not just Carrie sort of doesn't like phones. There's a reason that Carrie doesn't like phones. And in the same way as, like she used to push herself to do things that are really uncomfortable and now recognizes, and she still does to a point because, life goes on, but recognizes why they're uncomfortable. So I am learning very slowly, unfortunately, like glacially slowly, to not put her into positions where she is going to be uncomfortable without thinking.
And
I forgot that you,
confusing.
sorry, Carrie, I forgot that you use so many metaphors and analogies so brilliantly, David.
I do think it's hard, though, for people to understand us as autistic people, because I think, on a Saturday morning when our radio show's on, I'm answering the phone all the time and I'm absolutely fine.
Yes.
And so there's no explanation why 10 minutes later when we walk out of that studio, if David passes me a phone, I can't speak. And I think that's what's confusing, is that it doesn't work in a logical way. The things that you struggle with aren't always logical.
But you're prepared that that's going to happen. That's part of the radio show. So you expect that, not the, I'd be the same. Like if my wife did that to me, she doesn't, and I don't think she would now, but it's freeze, rejection, no.
And I realise, I remember when Tyler, now 23-year-old, was at school, and Ty couldn't get into school sometimes, and Ty then on one occasion came with me to the House of Commons and did a speech about being autistic. I thought this would be amazing coverage, and just to see an autistic person speaking, National Autistic Society, everyone's excited. The school said, oh, we're going to put it into our little newsletter at school. And then they said, actually, no, we can't. Because if Ty's refusing to come to school and then Ty can show up at the House of Commons, then obviously there's double standards. Like, actually, no, there isn't double standards. This is just how autism works.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can do stuff, sometimes we can't.
Yes, that day.
It's not logical.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So why then, David, why did you want to go for an assessment, an ADHD assessment?
Well, when I see people have a diagnosis, I think there are numerous ways of looking at a diagnosis. And one of the remarks that we had commonly when we were getting diagnoses for our children was, why do you want to label them?
Yes.
And the thing that I became really very aware of is that labeling and explaining aren't the same thing. You know, why do I label that thing in the corner that's cold a fridge? Because it explains its function.
Yes.
I know the explanation, but I would like to have verification
Yes.
of the explanation why I, as a moderately intelligent person, find things that other people of equal intelligence find really easy, incredibly difficult.
Tell me about some of those things.
Structural things. If somebody gives me a structure, I can fly. If somebody says you structure it, we're in trouble.
It's ordering thoughts.
Ordering
anything.
thinking sequentially, not going, procrastination is the thief of, oh, look, a squirrel. Because that's kind of how my mind goes. It's like, what's the thing I'm focusing on? Too often I find the thing I'm focusing on is the last thing I thought about rather than the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And I kind of go down a rabbit hole. I love research, but I've lost count of the number of times I'm doing brilliant research on something totally meaningless and not looking at the thing that I'm actually supposed to be doing. I'd like to know how to order that, and I would also like to just have confirmation that it's not because I'm thick. But actually, it's because my brain wiring is such that my moments of brilliance, and I do have them unbelievably, my moments of brilliance are caused by exactly the same thing that creates my moment of chaos.
Which is the incredible thing, isn't it? Of the brilliance and the magic and the stress and the pain and the challenge.
Absolutely.
David has always been really good at linking with people who can work in a team. He's a real team player, and that, I think, has worked to your advantage. So David had a brilliant manager in his early career, and the manager and the PA kind of covered the cracks. And so if you could just put David in the middle of a stage and say, right, perform, oh my gosh, he will have every single person's attention. He's a brilliant performer, will hold the audience in the palm of his hand. Ask him to send an invoice after the gig, and it won't get done.
No.
So
I would
ask him to get there on time, ask him to get the car ready. All those things that support that performance, David needs help with. And fortunately, because he's such a lovely human being, he's always linked up with people. And then at home, that's who I am in that context.
Yes.
Carrie is the absolute monarch of structure and organization. And I find myself really dependent on that. I'll give you an example. I was doing a festival. I was performing at a festival in the north of England earlier this year in the summer. And after we'd been on the road for about an hour, my road manager and I, we were, quite a way up the M1, about to go onto the M6 because it was northwest, got a call from Carrie. Carrie said, you know the bag and your clothes, your stage clothes? I said, yeah. And Carrie said, did you want them? And I said, they're in the boot of the car. And Carrie said, they're in the hallway of the house. Where would you like to meet? So fortunately, Carrie...
I just got in the car and drove.
And we met halfway. We turned back.
Amazing.
We met halfway. I called the promoter and said, look, I'm not going to get there until half an hour before.
He's so lovely and charming. Everyone forgives him.
Yes.
See, they wouldn't do that with me. They'd just be like, no, she's spiky. Whereas David is so sweet that everyone forgives him all the time.
But I'm thinking about the next thing and then the thing after that. And often so much so that I lose focus of the current thing.
Yes. And so you've been on a waiting list for how long?
It's got to be a year and a half now, almost 2 years, isn't it?
Yeah, nearly 2 years.
It's almost 2 years. And I don't know why the waiting list is so long. It's probably somebody with the ADHD is actually structuring the waiting list. And that's why. So it will get done eventually.
Let's then talk about some organisation and structure and traditions around Christmas.
Oh, love Christmas.
Tell me about Christmas in your household.
I don't even know where to begin with Christmas in our household. I think what happened was when David and I got married 36 years ago, we started to invite people to our home who didn't have family to go to. So we kind of made up a family, and then we're like, that's our family, as well as our family. And that grew and grew and grew. And alongside that, David had also had another part of his West Indian upbringing where they had like a big West Indian day on Boxing Day. Okay. So what happened was those two things joined together, and now we have about over 20 on Christmas Day, and we have 120 on Boxing Day.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Right. So,
That's great.
But, given that we're both neurodivergent, I don't know what part of our brains loves it.
Yeah.
Absolutely
So there must be,
love it.
Every autistic person is different. I absolutely love having loads. I love the house filled with people, and people enjoying themselves makes me feel great.
When my wife and I moved house and we did a load of work to the house, and our goal was Christmas, ready for Christmas, because all the family are coming. My wife's brother lives in Australia. They were coming over. So there was this big deadline, and I'm going to do the roast, and I really want everyone there. Yeah. I hadn't been diagnosed at this point, but I was really up for that. And I'm really antisocial, actually. And so I kind of love the idea of what you've just said, but the reality terrifies me of that many people and that much organisation and that much sensory. But you have 120 people over to the house.
Yep.
Yes.
And a lot of them, what's great is people bring food. People go, what can we bring?
Yep.
So we cook a load of food.
We cook loads. We're cooking for days before.
Yeah. And then people bring, and then we've got members of the family who like are DJs. We sit around the grand piano. We sing Christmas carols. We eat loads of food. Christmas. We drink loads of drink. We have a party afterwards and we dance. We start about 3 p.m, and by about midnight, everyone's gone home. Okay. Because people are
it
just
finishes
like,
early because I need to go to bed.
Okay.
10:30, I go to bed.
Yes.
That's a late night for me.
Yeah, that's a very late night.
And but it's a really interesting. It's become a tradition, so much so that we're seeing a very gradual handover to the next gen. It's been happening at our house for 20 plus years. Before that, it was at my aunt and uncle's house. Okay. It started in the late 50s. It started with a group of 5 guys whose wives and children were back in Jamaica. They'd come over, sort of part of the Windrush generation, at the invitation of the government to help rebuild. And it got to Christmas and they were like, really lonely. So they got together on Boxing Day. And then every Boxing Day, it just built and built and built and built from 5 people to 120 plus. But the point is that Carrie and I, we have it at our house and we take it on and we embrace it. And then when it's over, it's just like we have pajama day.
We shut the doors. Do not knock on my door
on the 27th. Forget that.
Forget it.
Okay.
But we have another Christmas tradition on the 27th, which is it's just the family and anything that's left over. Carrie is the greatest pie maker, one of the best pastry chefs I know. She is brilliant.
I love making moments that will be remembered. I feel like memory is so important when, eventually we'll pass. And what will our children hold? What will they be left holding? And they will have so many memories from Christmas Eve. We go out into the little shed. We go into the little shed and we do the Christmas story. That's the beginning of Christmas. There's like no presents.
With candlelight.
It's not about presents. It's not about all the partying that's going to happen in a couple of days. It's just about what is Christmas really about. So they understand that. They tell the story. It's all candlelit. It's like really lovely. Just the family. The next day is presents and close family, and then the craziness of Boxing Day. And then Pie Day. And all of those are, I'm really hoping, memories that our children will carry with them for their lives and
continue.
And maybe continue, maybe they won't, but that they will know this is how I grew up. I grew up with my parents engaged, gathering. I don't know. I think sometimes whatever you had in your childhood, you either want to copy it or you want to go the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And for me, my mum didn't like having people at our house because the house was always so tidy. And we're a little bit more raggedy around the corners, and I really love that. it's about people and not stuff.
Yeah, so you are doing the opposite
Doing the
of what you had.
yeah.
Yes.
How were your Christmases growing
My
up?
Christmases were always people. We go around to my aunt and uncles on Boxing Day. We would have Christmas, my mother, my gran, myself, and sometimes we'd be joined by one or two people on Christmas Day. But it always felt like Christmas Day was kind of much more about preparing for Boxing Day.
Yes.
Because at night they'd be like cooking up stuff to take over. But yeah, I really wanted the Christmas of my imagination to be real. Because I think Christmas is more than a day in the calendar, and it's more than an event. It's a feeling.
Yeah.
And quite often I'm aware that people spend Christmas feeling disappointed because the feeling they anticipate is absent. And sometimes the feelings that we bury, the things that we manage to have hidden away in our peripheral vision so we don't have to see them, come very clearly into focus at Christmas. Feelings like loss or loneliness or being in a crowd of family and looking around a room and thinking, everybody here has known me for most of my life. None of them know me.
Yeah. It's a really
Nobody
weird
gets
time in
me.
that sense. And I'm always struck by it, of what you see on adverts and all the stereotypical pieces of Christmas, and everyone's having a lovely time, and yet loads of divorce happens.
Or
And
people that don't get on. I think that's what's really, it shows those issues up, doesn't it? Whether that's in the nuclear family or whether that's the broader family as they come and visit, is relational, and how we work on those relationships during the year to make sure that Christmas works. I think for David and I, we have family, but we also have hybrid family. And I think hybrid family, it doesn't matter how small it is.
Yeah.
No.
If it's just three of you just sitting together, that to me, if it's people that know you and you can show up as yourself and they can show up as themselves, that for me that's what makes, that's the seeds of community.
Yes.
Even if it's two people.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Just that. That's all you need. This is a funny thing to say because it's hierarchical, but I think often in families, people are trying to reach up. I want to be liked by that person. Actually, there's people all around you here that you probably normally just reject. If you actually invited those people into your house, you'd have like a really great family that you could all hang with. And that's kind of, David and I just look around us. We're like, yeah, you're nice. Are you on your own? Come round our house. And everyone gets to know each other, and then they have their own little split off relationships. That
Absolutely.
connection of people, that networking of people is so important.
I mean, when you boil it right down, and I know I think this every year, it is really just about people getting together, right? And in one way, I know I always feel like, it shouldn't just be that we have to have this Christmas thing to get people together. It shouldn't be that that's the big family time. It should be like that more throughout the year. There should be more Christmases.
You're right. There should
throughout
be
the
more
year.
reflections of small versions of what happens at Christmas happening all the way through.
Or
Because
appreciation of what you've got.
Yes.
Yeah, then it's
celebration
meaningful.
of what you've got.
Or actually saying, I haven't spoken to this person for a year now. I've got to sort this out. I've got to work out, how do I forgive, knowing that the same thing might happen again. And I think it brings those things into focus, Christmas. But for me, they're things that I'm trying to work on constantly. Again, that might be an autistic thing, but my head is like a record player. It will just keep going round and round till I've resolved something. I have to have resolution with people. So maybe that's easier for me because I have to work on it. Otherwise, it drives me insane.
How do your kids deal with Christmas?
Our kids have permission to just walk away at Christmas. And so they really engage and they walk away.
And they come back when they're ready.
So good.
Yeah.
guys.
So they turn up as themselves.
Yeah.
And they all want something different to eat. So.
Yes. Let's talk about me. So when we had Tylen on and I was asking him about meal times, he was telling me that there's no singing at meal times.
No. Oh, no.
How are Christmas meal times?
No singing.
Absolutely.
The minute the last fork's gone down, though, they're dancing on the tables, let me just say.
Yeah. And that's when the games start, isn't it?
games. Oh my gosh, killer
Christmas
charades.
Day, killer charades and quizzes and all sorts. And we break into teams and
Everyone wants to be boss.
everyone is uber competitive apart from me.
You're not competitive.
No, for me,
No, not at all.
winning.
No.
For me, winning isn't everything. It's the only thing.
Yeah. And then the children get really annoyed with David because he's always got like a little slither of kind of like snidiness in his wanting to win. Everyone else is just like having a laugh and David gets a bit serious.
No, I think
about it.
I actually think that's very kind of you. I think it's actual fully fledged bitterness.
Yeah.
That, you know, and it's particularly if I lose.
Yeah.
It's a bitterness. I mean, like
He wants a steward's inquiry.
every time. It's a bitterness I tend it. I look
Only
after
child
it.
syndrome.
I knit a bonnet and put it on it. I feed it and rock it to sleep while singing a lullaby.
I
Ties in lemon
do
juice.
worry sometimes with my kids when I really am only kind of wanting them to win, and I'm kind of like, guys, no, you've got to win. It is about winning.
Yes.
That's funny.
I'm so like you.
Forget this taking part stuff.
Yes.
It's you've got to
Kindred
win.
spirits. That's all
Do you
I
know
can
what?
say.
All I know is this, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. The person who coined the phrase, it isn't whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game, lost.
Yes, agree.
Right.
Only a loser says that.
Only a loser says that.
Only a loser says, "Oh, but it was nice to be involved, or it was good to take part." That's the sort of very noble.
And Carrie has spent years pretending to not be remotely
I
competitive.
actually don't care.
Okay,
Carrie doesn't care as long as she's winning.
you don't care.
I'm shocked at your conversation, guys. Literally.
You see,
it's about process
like
for me
Monopoly,
in everything.
playing Monopoly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, I really. And when my wife or the kid, like, you're taking this really seriously, as if like that is something wrong.
In the
That's
winter,
so funny.
Christmas of 1994, I played Trivial.
Hold a grudge.
Oh, I played. Hold it. What you mean? I'm telling you, man. I plant a tree in the garden. I plant the grudge in the garden and I water it. I played Trivial Pursuit with my mother and father-in-law, and it came down to the last question. And I still remember the question to this day. And every now and again, I'll be driving along in a car and I'll remember that I didn't know the answer and get really upset with myself.
Can I just throw something in? Just answer me yes or no. Bitter about MasterChef.
Not the one I won.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Look at
Master
that as
Chef.
an
A
answer,
MasterChef.
though.
MasterChef.
Yeah.
Not the one I
Yes
won.
or no?
Yes, sabotaged. I was sabotaged.
Mastermind.
It wasn't fair.
The weakest link.
Oh, that really wasn't fair. I got
That's what I'm
asked.
saying.
I got
literally
asked.
can hold a grudge about losing.
We got asked a question that only a professor of quantum physics could answer. That was the final question. The other lot got asked about a
remembers?
breed of dog.
Okay.
Yes.
What dog comes from the Alsace region of France? I'm like, hold on. We just had a question on quantum physics. Not fair.
The pattern that I noticed from what you've just asked is you haven't won anything.
Oh, no, I've won a great deal. But winning is the natural state, so I remember the losing. I expect to win.
And then what was your subject on Mastermind?
My subject was the music of Stevie Wonder.
Oh,
I got all those questions, apart from one. I got all those right, but it's just the general knowledge. Wow, some of them were. I thought my general knowledge was good. I went on there and realised it was pub quiz standard.
so clearly music has a role at Christmas. I'm just going, carols.
Yeah.
And what about Christmas songs?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yes.
When we put the Christmas tree up, we have to have Nat King Cole's Chestnuts Roasting.
Has to be.
Has
is
to
that,
be.
is that
Not
who's
chestnuts
Yes, it
roasting?
is, yeah, the
it is.
Christmas
that
song.
your whose rules that?
Actually, Olive, our eldest child,
Okay.
who also is completely glued to the idea of traditions and memories, and like, we did a good job, but maybe too good. 'Cause
Okay.
if it doesn't go exactly as we've decided,
Can I
they've
say
decided it's not.
also, who gets to put
The
the
star
star on the tree?
Oh my
Olive
gosh.
will scroll back and say, I took a photo last
Literally.
December It was
my
you. So this
It's
year,
not your turn.
it's not
Wow.
your turn.
These are not under 10-year-olds. These are people in their this.
Wow. Evidence.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
Because
that
you take turns.
Yes.
yeah, they have to take turns.
Yes.
And
And
it's all listed
Due-
on someone's phone.
Due process and protocol
Okay.
absolutely has to take precedent every time.
Because it's interesting, isn't it, in terms of like, ritual, routine, structure, how open to change
Yeah.
are the family.
Yeah.
How many
and
times do you
that's-
bring in a new
yeah.
tradition or
Mm.
And how do you accommodate everybody? I think that's with 4 children is always really difficult for us. How by meeting one's needs, you're
Yes.
then denying the other one's needs. So how do you make that bit fair when they're all being brought up slightly differently? So it's not fair straight away. And then I think now, and I'd be interested to know how this works for you, Ben, actually, because now I know I'm autistic. I think there is a part of me that feels I should be allowed to show up with my children as my autistic self. And I spent so long masking with my children because I just have to be the parent for them. Like, can I lose it? Can I have a meltdown? Because I've never been allowed to do that. So I'm dwelling on the concept of that.
yeah. How do you feel about that?
I feel that my children are of an age where they should know that it's actually, adults also sometimes struggle.
Yeah.
And they need to see that they might need to consider that their mum is not Titanic.
Yes.
I'm not Titanic in my ability to just keep going and taking everything on the chin. I might also have a moment where I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I can lose it, which I wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I have more permission to do that now I have a diagnosis, I feel.
100%. And that you are in a neurodivergent friendly.
Yeah, it's like taking up
Family.
space. Yeah, so being able to show up as myself, and that means not being perfect mum. I think that I'm struggling a bit with that bit.
Why do you think you're struggling with it?
Because I think it's very hard to be rude to your children.
Do you think your children would want you to be yourself?
Yes. In theory, if you sat them down, they'd be like, Mum, you need to be your true self. Because they've had all that coaching, be your authentic self, Mum. Show up as yourself. Be yourself. You have agency. You have autonomy. Yeah, they've learned the script. However,
the unspoken part of that sentence would be your true self to Dad.
yes, just not with us. Yeah.
Do you think, therefore, that, and I mean this with lots of kindness and love, that because you didn't know and were masking, you've actually set them up to expect you to be this certain Carrie and rely on this Carrie rather than, I don't know, the cracks and being yourself?
Yes. And I think some of that, actually, to be fair on our neurotypical parents, I think when you're parenting neurodivergent children and children also that have mental health struggles going on and behaviours that are really challenging, you learn a new way of parenting, and it's very gentle and it's very, you're holding boundaries, but a lot of it's quite, it's therapeutic, it's trauma informed, it's blah, blah, blah. You've got all of that stuff. But even though you know all that stuff, you're still a human, aren't you? And I'm very good at obeying rules. And so I've been very good at doing all of that style of parenting. But whilst inside thinking, I want to scream.
Yeah.
And I think now I've got a diagnosis, there is part of me that's like,
I can't scream.
Go on then.
I expect you to scream.
Yeah, like, whoa, what would happen? The sky might fall in. Yeah, and I might have to say, sorry, kids, but this is also me.
So this Christmas,
yeah, pressure on.
Yeah, how do you feel about then trying that out?
Yeah.
God, I sound like a therapist. But
Yeah.
like, how do you feel about actually trying that?
Yeah, I think I would really struggle with that. I think I would be okay with my older two. I think my younger two would have more of a struggle with. And when you have a child whose behaviour is to act violently, I don't have any option but to shut shop.
Yeah.
Keep
Be
stum.
calm.
Be the perfect mum.
Yep.
You don't have any option to be anything other than that, unfortunately.
Yeah, which I guess also you are, if I think about my three, I parent them differently.
Yes.
I'm not the one consistent person because
But there is no one size fits all with
There isn't.
people, is there?
I don't treat every single person exactly the same.
That way of parenting seems to work for neurotypical children, that you just bring them up and they're fine, aren't they?
Okay.
Whereas I think when you have children that are all very, very different with very different responses, you've got to shape shift around those kids in ways that are
100%.
just, you've got to be ahead of the game with each child, so that there is never any space for you to say what you might be thinking inside. And it's not worth it. The cost is too great if you did. So you have to somehow hold that in. And that's, this is what I talk to so many parents about, and especially neurodivergent parents. It's really hard. When do you get to just have a meltdown?
Yeah. I hear from so many other parents with young children, newly diagnosed children. Sam, my wife, like, we can be at the school gates and parents are coming up to us and kind of going, look, my son, daughter, whatever has just been diagnosed and
Yeah.
I literally don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And these are adults kind of going, I now don't know how to parent.
Because, it's true. And it's true you don't know how to parent. There is a point in everybody's parenting journey with your children. To begin with, you're like, hang on a minute, why am I the parent that keeps getting called in the school? What's going on? Why are these other parents succeeding with their children? What's happening here? What's going on? And that takes a while for you to get your head round to become the parent. That's not going to happen overnight. You can go on all the training courses going. For me, I jumped ship quite quickly. David you were a little slower, weren't you?
I was a lot slower. I do think that one of the things that it causes among parents is that we have to entirely redefine what success is, in order to know how to parent. Einstein said, if you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, you think it was stupid. And I feel that when Carrie said we need to put our kids into water, I spent a lot of time trying to teach them how to climb trees.
Okay.
Because all the other kids were climbing trees.
Yes.
And therefore, this is the yardstick. This is the metric by which you measure, advance. How do we know the progress of your child? Well, there are metrics by which you measure. And if those metrics suit the majority, they must be right for everybody.
Yes.
And our kids, sure, they're in the minority because our kids are neurodivergent, but hey, surely they can learn to climb trees as well. Rather than, it took me a long time to stop and discover who our children were, rather than trying to show
Where
them
does that
who
come
they
from in
should.
you?
Oh, I was about to say yes, because I think there is, and this is, you and I wouldn't get this, the model minority thing of, you've come from the West Indies, you need to be better than the people around you, otherwise you're going to get
That's
caught
what
up,
what I grew up being told, and I don't know. A child of my generation, you got to be twice as good. You got to be 10 times better to get just as far.
God, you are not sadly the first person on this in that seat on the hidden 20% to say those exact words.
Yeah. And that's what I grew up with. And that black and mixed race kids, they're the ones that get expelled. They're the ones that get excluded. They're the ones that, the narrative around them is they just don't fit because they don't want to fit, because home isn't a place where they're taught to fit. So you almost want your children to become, if you like, the model child. And I didn't realize, I'd never consciously thought this, but I didn't realize how deeply ingrained in my psyche that philosophy, that way of thinking was, until it became clear from everything we were being told that you don't have the model child. And then it became, well, I am driven towards making them the model child.
Yes.
It is incumbent upon me to make them the model child. It's my responsibility to make them able to fit in.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, growing up as a white child, I've been taught you can be quirky, you can be different, because you'll stand out. You find a different way of succeeding, right?
Yes.
So that's a privilege. That's a privilege that wasn't afforded to David. So whilst I jumped ship quickly and my parenting went, right, that's it. Our kids are great. They're just great in different ways. David was like, we need to keep to this track because this track is going to keep us safe.
Yeah.
Literally going to keep us safe. So,
what a tension.
Yeah. Huge tension.
That's in you, it's in you, that tension. That's like built in.
It really is built in. It's really built in. And I believe that there are times in all of us where we don't know the things that are just naturally part of our perception of life, naturally part of our view of the world until it's challenged.
Yeah.
And you don't know why you're driven towards this, but you just know you are. And you don't know why you're defending something that's indefensible because it's not appropriate for your own
Doubling down,
child,
yeah.
but you just are. And you don't know why you're pursuing a system that is patently, obviously failing your child, but you just are.
Yeah. We talked a bit, or you talked a bit before, David, about, the difference between a label and an explanation. And I hear you. We get people, and I hear people, but why do you want another label? What's it going to do? Why does it matter? And you're kind of like, because it is going to start to explain and help people understand and help me understand my children and help the school. And, there's actually, it's so much more than, I can write some things after my name.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, yes. I think that when you have children who are really struggling in school and who are traumatized by school, you inhabit the underbelly of some world that literally no parents get unless they're in that same space. They just don't. They can't. There's no way that people can understand what we face. They just don't. And in that underbelly place, just finding other parents, you just need to look each other in the eye and go, easy day or hard day? And you just go, it's a hard one. And we know what that means.
Yeah.
Nothing more needs to be said.
All the details of the things that you never thought you would face as a parent. Parenting, so I just bring my kid up and that'll be fine. You don't understand what they're gonna, under 5-year-olds with mental health issues and stuff, and big challenges from day one.
And in the parent group that we run, there's a phrase that we use, which is that everybody needs a place where they can describe without having to explain.
Yes.
Because I think the thing that most notably the parents of neurodivergent people, and quite often the people themselves get is, well, why did you do that?
Yeah.
It's like if you understand autism or you understand ADHD, that question becomes redundant. Allow me to describe what happened and, be in a position where people will go, get it.
Yeah, without having to justify it.
Absolutely.
It's all of that, because nobody wants to be a bad parent, right?
No,
I would hate if someone said that I was a bad parent and a bad father. I would hate that, obviously. So everything I'm trying to do is my best for my children. And if I've got to like justify that to you, how exhausting.
It's exhausting. And not only that, Ben, but I think what we end up doing is just giving headlines, and that doesn't really explain. We just do the headlines because we know that if I go, right, this, and this, people go, okay. Whereas all of our children are so much more than the headline.
Yeah.
There's so much more than suicidal ideation or violence or self-harm or not eating. There's so much more than that. But these are some of the big headlines that will make you understand. It's shorthand. It means you'll go, okay, my child's not doing all that stuff. But I feel that really sells our children short because they are so much more than just those things.
But they're just the challenges, right?
Right?
Not the full story.
The extraordinary children. These children are just on the daily, just bringing left of field stuff that makes your brain explode. Like on a daily basis, our children are saying and doing stuff that amazes me. And I treasure that. I just think I never thought parenting would involve this. This is magical. All the little catchphrases and the things that our kids do, that our families are full of these things now. And the fact
autism. That's what Thailand taught me.
The autism, the singing in the
loved
kitchen.
Thailand, and Thailand gave me permission without him even realizing it to unmask in our chat.
Yeah.
Of being giddy about ice hockey and Mighty Ducks.
Yes.
And of course, we had no small talk because we could just get straight into talking about stuff.
Yeah.
And then giggle about things. And
it's a relief, actually, isn't it?
For a young person to, not that I'm old, but I was really surprised myself at how having a young person who's so self-aware and so brilliant, I was really struck by how that enabled me to be myself more. And it's happened again with, seems to be people in their early 20s.
Yeah, they're amazing, aren't they?
That we've had on here.
Yeah.
Tying include, like, there's something going on there.
There really is. I agree with you.
That gives me a lot of hope.
Yes. I have the same thing because Olive is a little bit older than Tylen, but when the two of them invite their friends around, I just listen. A lot of them are neurodivergent. They're all creatives. You just listen in and I'm transfixed by how they think, how they feel. I think, gosh, I'm nearly 60 and I've only just got to thinking some of this stuff. And you've got this at like 22. What's going on?
I know, which when you kind of then follow that through to go, okay, future generations.
Please run the world.
Exactly.
You lot, please run the world.
It gives me so much hope of like, oh, maybe we can get to breaking this cycle and we've got a younger generation coming through that is more inclusive, basically, and more wise and way more worldly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's got to be a good thing. I want to just come back to Christmas for a second. It's quite a big sensory time.
Yeah.
When you think about...
Do you know what I love? You just saying sensory. I don't know what happens in your house, but in our house, there's this wonderful thing. Every present that anyone opens, but each of us they'll say, I've got a cardigan. Each person will go, put it to their mouth.
Yes.
And they have to feel the cardigan on their lips and smell it.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have that? And then the next person goes, oh, that looks lovely. I know that in neurotypical families, they're like, oh, I love that shade of red. Why don't you go and try it on? In our family, no. We need to know, what does it feel like on my mouth?
What does it smell like?
And what does it smell like? And
let me touch that.
Yes.
Let me touch it. Everyone wants to touch each other's presents. So I'm sure if an observer was just observing our family opening presents, they would be like, what is going on here?
It's so true. It's so true.
But it is
squealing over things that, ice hockey for Tylen. There was one year, Tylen happened to say in November, I'm obsessed with Moomins. And at Christmas got about 50 Moomin presents. It was like, there's only so many Moomin figures you can get. And everyone's like, great, we found their special interest. Moomins it is.
Go.
This year it's Moomins. It was Muppets.
Okay.
Yeah, Muppets, Moomins, ice hockey.
Yes.
Yeah. What's great is that, even as an adult, a really thought through adult, incredibly articulate and able to express emotions and feelings in a wonderful way. There is still that element of Ty that when that special interest is sparked, they're still the same as they ever were.
It's great. If you meet everyone's special interest, then you just can't go wrong at Christmas. I mean, I'm so aware with autistic people, you can disappoint them with presents so much, but if you get the special interest, you can't go wrong with the special interest.
Yeah. So it's quite, I was filling out a form with River, our 5-year-old, last week. And one of the questions was, what's your favourite book? And she made me so happy because she said, Encyclopedia, Daddy.
Oh, yes.
Great present. That's going to be a great present. Anytime you get anything to do with that.
And so I've got her the Guinness Book of World Records this year because I used to receive that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Our youngest is the same.
Yeah,
absolutely loved
over
it.
Yeah, just reading out what's the biggest bogey ever.
I'm saying that because when you talk about buying for special interests and what to get neurodivergent people for Christmas, should be easy.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to cost loads of money because little Kermit, he will squeal over.
You can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong.
No, you're absolutely right.
But then there's the aspect of all the smells, the sounds, the colours, loud rooms. It's quite a big, it's a big we've all got to eat this same thing. It's quite a big sensory challenge, I think.
Yes.
So for people listening who are parents with neurodivergent kids or kids that struggle, what would your advice be for them at Christmas time?
So there is a little brochure from one of the stores that goes around, and our children choose their Christmas meal in about October. So we know what each person wants. And I suppose there's a way of doing that with whether you're shopping in Lidl or Waitrose, there's a way of doing what small thing do you want that's your thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. I think as parents, you also just have to accept that sometimes even those things are not going to work on the day, and that's okay. Yeah. It's okay. And tell your child that it's okay. If it doesn't work on the day, you know what? We'll get beans on toast for you. It's fine.
And it's where do you want to sit at the table? And if you don't want to sit at the table, that's fine.
Yeah.
And what music do you want? And if you don't want music, that's fine.
Yeah.
There are so many things that for somebody who is a neurotypical person, they're entirely negotiable.
Yeah.
They take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that it took me a long time to get around, well, two of the things. First, to realize that I wasn't neurotypical. But second, to realize that because certain things were, negotiables for me, didn't mean they weren't non-negotiables for people who really, really were affected by them. Yeah. And I'd be like, take it or leave it. I don't care. But also there's a streak of PDA in some of us that makes it like... I was
literally about to... I was waiting for you to finish. Pathological demand avoidance. Yes. We need to talk about that. I think it is exactly that, because there are some things where if you tell that child, this is what we're doing, this is what we're having, this is who's coming, and they have not been a part of it, they are not going to collaborate with you.
Absolutely.
And they won't cooperate on the day. So I think the more they are involved in the decisions,
the more collaborative
and the more
it is.
power they have, with boundaries, but the more power they have, the more likely they are to join in.
Yeah. No surprises.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And no pressure to have to react to everyone's presence.
Yeah.
I feel immense pressure to go, oh, I love it. And that makes me feel awful. I'm exhausted within 10 minutes if I have to do that. Yeah.
And Christmas presents is a big, all the eyes on you.
And
it's
I
a big
think
one.
Processing happens at different speeds, doesn't it, for us?
It means that for many people, it becomes a time of extreme masking.
Yes.
Because you know that whoever has given you that present doesn't just require, but demands a performance.
Yeah.
And so you have to be going, whoa, wow, even if you're just like, meh. Because meh isn't going to be good enough. It's going to disappoint them. It's going to upset them. And I think that actually we've reached a point where whenever I give Carrie a present, I kind of hold my breath. But I'm quite cool if Carrie doesn't like it, because I have discovered that Carrie is absolutely brilliant at then going to the sale that's going to be happening a couple of days later, the day after Pi Day, and then getting a whole lot of stuff for the one thing that I got that was rubbish that she actually loves. Put it this way, one thing that I have learned with an autistic wife, always keep the receipts.
It's true. It is true.
My wife always tries to buy me clothes, and I love her. She's got a brilliant fashion sense and amazing clothes. But then I know that I'm never happy about what she's bought. And I think this year will be different. I don't think she'll buy me clothes because we've been on that journey to understand. Like,
there's something about feeling a little bit out of control when people buy you stuff as well.
Yeah,
I'm just, as you're saying that, I'm thinking I might be a bit like that. If I had chosen it, I'd be fine. But because you've chosen it, I now feel, I don't know, what is that feeling? I don't feel safe inside somehow.
I've never worn the clothes that she's bought me.
Wow.
And she knows that.
If you had bought it, would you have worn them?
Maybe, but I have the sort of neurotypical dream or idea of, I should wear lots of different clothes, and you should dress in lots of colours, and you should have loads of patterns. And you should have all this freedom to wear what you want to wear and just dress yourself. And then, so sometimes I buy those kind of clothes and then I never wear them. And so
you like wearing the same thing.
Yeah. I have a meltdown that Uniqlo, where I get these trousers from that I have 10 pairs of, have stopped.
Yeah, nightmare. That would be David.
Stop doing that.
Same.
I know how to spoil David at Christmas, to buy him an exactly the same version of the same thing that he got the year before, because I know there's one shirt. If he's got the option to wear that shirt, he will wear it every single day. And it's soft. It's not suede. It's fake, like a fake velour type shirt. Look, he's loving, like, even thinking about it. Look at his face. You can see him just...
It's home. It's comfy.
It's the fear. I'm
don't have to
so
think
much more
about
interested
it.
in the feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And do you know what? As you were talking about it, I was thinking about when Carrie first met me, when we first started going out. But Carrie said, "Oh, you got leather trousers?" And I was like, "Yes." And I opened a wardrobe, and it's like I had the same black leather trousers in brown, and I had them in beige, and I had them in white, and I had them in blue.
Yeah.
And they were exactly the same. It's like they work.
Yeah.
Why am I gonna stress myself looking for something else when this works? Let's just get a load of these.
Yeah.
I completely get you, Ben. Completely.
Yeah.
There are so many more.
But I wrestle with it because I'm like, oh no, but I kind of wear the same thing every time. And I like that. And I only wear kind of green and white and black, and that's kind of it. And occasionally I will test myself and go, I'm at home, it's the weekend.
I'm going to wear a red sweatshirt.
Gonna wear something blue.
And what happens?
My wife says, really brings out your eyes. You look so nice in blue. And I go, oh, thanks. And then I don't wear it again. And Christmas is the perfect time for it, where there's these norms and this social pressure.
Yes.
That we've all got to sit around the table. We've all got to be happy families.
Yes.
We've all got to have the nice moment in front of the fire to open our presents and sing carols and drink mulled wine. And, you know, we have all of this stuff that when you said, like, it's okay if they don't want to eat at the table. Yeah. It's okay if
they don't have to do any of it.
Food.
They're far more likely to do it if we've given them permission to not have to do it. That's it's like that reverse psychology thing. If you need to leave the table, if you don't want to eat there, if you want to spend all day in your bedroom and not eat anything, then that will be the day. That will be your Christmas day, and I'll bring you up something in the evening. And that's fine. Give your child permission to do that, because they're far more likely then on their own steam to say, oh, it sounds like everyone's having fun down there, and I really like cheesecake, so I'm going to go down and have some of that. And then they come down and they sit there, and everyone's joyful, and it's great. And you get your little picture by the fire, because for a few minutes it happened.
Yeah.
But I also think as well that, you know, with this whole thing about you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that, it's really important that we don't have such a fixed understanding or a fixed picture of what the perfect Christmas looks like, that we are invested in our children, you know, doing it. Yeah. That thing of, if you say you don't have to, they're more likely to. Mm. I just want to clarify, if anyone's listening to this and thinking, I see, it's reverse psychology. It's not. They're free not to do it. They really are free. We are not invested in them doing it.
Yes.
It's not reverse psychology.
We've given up on that family. That family was never our family.
Yes, that's not your family.
No, it's not going to happen. So, and then weirdly, sometimes it does happen, and you're like, oh, that's
when
nice.
It does, great. And if it doesn't, great. You know, it's Christmas Day. I would love our children to get to 50 years old, each of them, and say, I had the Christmas Day that I wanted when I was growing up. Mm. And, you know, we got 4 different kids with then 4 different families, 4 different ways of spending Christmas, knowing that the Christmas Day that they want is fine, that it doesn't have to conform to some kind of norm. I think that all of our children, thanks to their amazing mum, have grown up recognizing that normal and ordinary aren't the same thing. And I think this is where we get a lot of confusion. What is normal for them and what's normal for families with neurodivergent children is, or who are neurodivergent themselves, is extraordinary.
Yes.
But it is entirely normal.
Yes.
So we don't have to conform to some kind of Dickensian norm of what Christmas is. Yeah. Make your own norm.
Yes.
Your own normal is your normal.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? It's like we approach Christmas like there's, I don't know, we're on a reality TV show and it's going to be publicised to everybody.
And there's this performance that we're putting on for no one in particular.
Exactly.
That's exhausting.
Exhausting. Not fair. Not fair on kids.
It's not fair.
You must sit at the table. You must do this. Now, and I can, you know, I am often in my household called militant. That is the phrase that is used. Because I like a plan.
Yeah.
I like repetition. I like routine. I like to get on with things, of like,
Let's get it done.
Let's speed this up.
Yeah.
And I like taking action. So it's like, come on, are we going to do this or not? Or what is the plan?
Yeah.
So yeah, I can be accused of being a bit militant at times, but then I deliberately at times don't make a plan. I don't lean in and impose my absolute need to have a plan on the rest of the family.
I'm very similar to you. I like a plan. I like it all to be worked out. One of the things that crisis in my family has birthed in me, just because it's been so difficult, is to enter into that liminal space, to enter into a space that isn't dualistic and black and white, to enter a space that is unknown, to enter a space that is so uncomfortable that you have to learn comfort in discomfort, that you have to learn contradictions sit alongside each other. Since entering that space, and it was crisis that pulled me into it, I love sitting in this space. When I first was pushed into it, into this space that didn't feel safe or secure, or it's so disordered, I hated it. And my big thing is, how do I get out of this? Now I'm not saying, how do I get out of it? I'm saying, I'm setting up home here.
Yeah.
This actually is the place where I need to learn how to live.
Yeah.
And since I've lent into that, life just feels so much more exciting. It's much more in the present. It's much more in process. It's much more anything could happen. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And there then becomes a security in knowing that anything can happen. I don't know how I managed to find that one in my head, but my brain has worked that one out.
I feel incredible safety and reassurance that I now know who I am. So I now know how my brain works.
Yes.
And therefore I can start to understand why I react to certain situations or why I think the way I think. So that kind of I feel like I've sort of taken a mask off but got a bit of armor on. To kind of go, I feel better equipped to deal with life.
Yeah.
I feel a bit more grounded. That's amazing.
It's enlightening, isn't it? It's enlightenment.
It is. That's why hearing that you're on a waiting list and have been for over 18 months, and we know it can be up to 10 years for ADHD assessments in parts of the country. It's just like, it's not okay.
It's really not.
Because it's not about a label, the aftercare is dreadful and there isn't that post support. But my God, just can we give people the keys?
Yes.
They can go and find the door. They've had to adapt. They've had to change. They've had to figure stuff out.
Yes.
They're used to that.
Yes.
Of the hidden 20%, if I had a New Year's resolution, it would be that more and more of the hidden 20% would grow comfortable with celebrating who they are, rather than feeling a pressure to conform to the world around them, to actually to express the world within them, rather than trying to fit in the world around them.
I mean, this guy, get him on the radio.
He's cute.
He's so
cute.
good, isn't he? He's so good. And what do you both hope happens or changes in the world of neurodivergence in society?
Oh, such a good question.
I hope that in the world of neurodivergence, it becomes much less about people thinking they're in the center and neurodivergent people are on the margins, but realizing actually neurodivergent people are in the center of their own world. And there is more than one world. There's more than one perspective. There's more than one viewpoint. There's more than one outlook. And there's more than one definition of success. And I really hope that neurodivergent people feel more and more as though they have the agency to redefine what they are and who they are and what success within the context of their own lives looks like to them, that it doesn't have to look like anyone else.
Yeah. Carrie?
I think I've spent so many years trying to raise awareness about neurodivergence, and I feel that through podcasts like yours and various other ways that, lots of people being diagnosed with ADHD, blah, 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 there is also another rising narrative, which is like, there's neurodivergent people going on about their neurodivergence. Actually, please don't do that. We need that highlighting. We need for our children to be heard.
It's been hidden.
It's yes. And
Absolutely.
as we become less hidden, I'm just aware there is another narrative rising up that we need to make sure doesn't gain voice, doesn't gain traction, and that we keep this on the agenda. It's a really important one.
I do not think that neurodivergent people who are able to be seen and heard and supported, who have a strong sense of moral justice and have finally found a voice, are going to be able to be silenced again.
Oh, I really hope so.
And
What about if we started from the perspective, Ben, that the people who you are concerned about, the people who you think, well, everybody's getting a diagnosis and people are talking about their neurological differences, rather than thinking these people are different from you, what if we started from the perspective that the people that we are beginning to understand are the people who have created the modern world that we inhabit, and without them, the world that we take for granted wouldn't actually exist? What if, rather than seeing the different from the norm as being less than, we see different from the norm as simply being other than?
yeah,
I think there is that, but there are things that we struggle with, we really struggle with. And maybe some of those things we struggle with are because we're trying to exist in a neurotypical world. But there are things, and we can't forget those things. We can't forget that our kids are struggling. We can't forget that every day neurodivergent children will be going into school and being traumatized by their experience there. We must not take that off the agenda. That is so important for this next generation. I don't want another load of children like mine coming out of school and needing a whole ton of therapy in order just to stay alive.
94% of children who are autistic are bullied.
Yeah. Right?
And the second biggest killer of autistics, suicide. Like, these are
Yes.
not about stats. They're really serious.
Yeah.
And so
We have to hold that, don't we?
We do.
Alongside
alongside the amazingness
Yes.
and all the flourishing and people being diagnosed and finding themselves and all that good stuff. Yeah, we've got to remember that that's not the norm. It's nowhere near just acceptable to be neurodivergent and be yourself. That is not yet acceptable.
we're nowhere near there.
We're
are
nowhere
we?
near.
Yeah.
And you're both such epic champions of, no, it's not even about neurodivergence. I'm like, you're just brilliant advocates of being yourself and allowing people to be themselves, i.e. your family. So thank you for coming back on. Thank you for all that you do. And ultimately, I take away from this leading into Christmas, like, it's okay. You're not getting marked. This is not an Christmas exam.
So good. Yes.
You know, you don't have to submit your proposal. So yeah, thank you. Just lots of love for you, and see you next year.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Happy 2025.
Thank you. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.